Reggie here with adventuresportU, and in this lesson I'm going to be showing you how to change out a tire on any bike. Now this can be really useful if you have a flat and you need to swap out that old tube, but in this case we have a perfectly good tube and it's just that our tire got old, so I'm going to be replacing the tire. Now one thing that we want to be mindful about is not pinching the tube when we reinstall it, and we want to make sure that the direction of rotation is moving correctly. So I'll show you all that and more in this lesson. For this job, you only need real simple tools, an air pump, and some tire levers. If your wheel is held on by lug nuts, then you might need a crescent wrench or some other size wrench that fits and can take those off. So I just want you guys to see the condition of this tire. You can see it's starting to crack, and if we're going really fast or applying a lot of pressure, one of those sidewalls might blow out real easy. So I'm going to go ahead and replace this with a brand new tire. Let's get started. So the first thing I need to do before removing the wheel is to release the brake. Now you can just squeeze these cantilever brakes together and pull that out, and there it goes. If you have disc brakes, you don't need to do this step. And if you have V brakes, it's a similar process. You just squeeze them and pop them out. So this bike has a quick release skewer. So I'm just gonna go over and hold this with my finger and then undo this side and loosen it. I'm holding this side so you can see it's not spinning. And then some bikes will have tabs here, so you might need to loosen it even more. But with this bike, it's just gonna pop right out. Real simple. So now that we have the wheel off, I'm gonna put it on the ground. I'm gonna take a tire lever and insert it on the sidewall here. And actually a cool trick with these tire levers is if you align them on the spokes, then when you pop it out, you can actually just hook it onto a spoke and it stays in place. So I'm gonna hook the first one, and then with the second one, I'm just gonna work my way around the tire until this whole side is clear. So now that I've got one entire side of the tire off, that means just hanging out here. Now I'm gonna reach under with the tire lever through to the opposite side of the bead, and I'm gonna just go ahead and yank that off, and then boom, the whole thing should just pop right off. It's gonna be stuck here at the valve. If you have the Pressa type, you're gonna have to unscrew this. If it's the Schrader, you shouldn't have one of those rings on, and that's gonna allow you to take the tube off and dismount the entire tire. So I've got my new tire here, and before I just throw it on there, I want to teach you guys two tips and tricks on how to mount these properly. The first is to look for the direction of rotation. So just go ahead and scan around the entire sidewall of the tire. So now that I found my rotation arrow, how am I going to make sure that I put it on the right way? So this is called the drive side of the bicycle, and obviously that's because this is where the drivetrain is. So my little trick is to always mount your quick release skewers on the opposite side of the drive side. That's because you don't want this up and down skewer part to be interfering with your derailleur. You should never have this side of the tab on your drive side. That's just a rule of thumb I follow. So when it comes to our front wheel, I always mount this as well on the opposite of the drive side. That way I can remember when I go to install my tire which way is going to be forward, which way is going to be backward. So at this point I've got the direction of rotation correct, and so for this I want to check where the hole for the valve stem is. Always line your label up with where your the valve of your tube is going to come out. Also in this step you might want to check your rim strip and just make sure that there's no spokes exposed. If there are any spokes exposed, then that could lead to a puncture. So just make sure that these are covered up. This rim strip still looks good, so I'm going to go ahead and pop that back on, that tire back on. And now you saw that I just snapped that tire on there on just one end, so obviously the other end is open. Alright, so now that I've got one side mounted, so I like to fill the tube up with just a little bit of air to get some shape. So here I go. I'm also pushing this back to get the valve stem in. So there you can see I fit the valve stem through. And then I'm just going to go around and make sure that this just gets tucked in all the way around, just like that. And boom, it fits in nicely. So this is a step where we got to be real careful. I'm just going to go around the edges and kind of push that tube in so it kind of seats inside the rim. So see how that tube is sort of hanging off the side. So what I like to do is just go ahead and go around the diameter of the wheel and just push that tube so it kind of sits in. And as I go around now, you can see that the tire is almost flush with the rim, and that's where I'm going to start tucking them in. All right, we're almost done, but this is the step where it gets so important not to get sloppy, because if we're not careful, we can ruin a new tube. So going around the edges of the rim, you're just gonna go ahead and push with your thumbs and just kind of tuck this bead in. See, I'm just pushing with my thumbs and tucking the bead in little by little. And by using my thumbs, I'm making sure that I'm not actually pinching that tube. Also, we wanna make sure that our valve is straight, so kind of had to push that to get that straight. I'm just making sure that I'm pushing carefully, going all the way around the diameter. Now, if it's really tight, it's probably because we added that air and the tube is holding shape. So this is where I go ahead and release that air. We don't really need the tube to hold shape anymore. Now we actually need it to give a little bit so I can get the rest of the tire on. And just going back around to this other side, now pushing, and it just goes right on. All right, now that we've got the tire on, the last step is just to pop it back onto the bike. Now, usually I'm gonna do this without re-inflating, because sometimes you might just have trouble getting it on with the old brakes. So I'm gonna wait to inflate this until after I've installed it and it's cleared through my brakes. Just pushing the skewer back on here, making sure it's nice and tight. And now coming back to the brakes and reinstalling that, making sure it spins free and clear. Great. And now that I'm done with that, I'm gonna go ahead and inflate this tire and I'll be ready to ride. Well, I hope you found this tutorial helpful. Be sure to give it a thumbs up if you liked it. Leave a comment if you have any questions, and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any new lessons from AdventuresportU.